one.
I'll tell you when it's live, and it's live now. All right. Well, welcome back to the Friday Phase of the Change Physician podcast and community. I am Melissa Cady with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and we are cross-posting over to my Challenge Doctor page. So if you're seeing me there, we are really on the Change Physician. So we are going to chat a little bit about what's happened this past week, what our favorite things are. That's why we're calling it the Friday Faves. Things that maybe we're grateful for, we just really enjoyed this past week, and then what's coming up in the future in this next week with our episodes for the podcast. So would you like to start with what happened this past week or what we released?
I think I started last week.
Did you? Okay, well then I'll start. I will tell you exactly what was on our podcast. And it looks like we had earlier this week, Surviving and Thriving Through the Locum's Life with Diana Lake. Dr. Di Fit Life is her handle on Instagram and quite a few other social media platforms. And she has really created and curated her own just lifestyle as a mom. I think she's a single mom. If I'm not mistaken, please correct me, Kevin. So juggling quite a few things, and basically is just has 3 or 4 things lined up, and has a way of just has developed relationships to create a life that has a lot more autonomy and choices that she makes for herself and her own family. So really great. She obviously has done this for some time and really understands the locum's life. So there's a lot of takeaways if you're ever considering that or want to just hear a little bit about the life related to locums or locum tenens is another name for it. And we had another episode, which was with Heather Hammerstedt, who is an emergency medicine physician and who's created an amazing online business. And we talked about this last week or the week before. I think we discussed, didn't we talk about Heather last Friday Faves, or has it just gone by fast? Oh, it's been a few.
It was last Friday Faves because it was coming up. That was upcoming.
Oh, you were talking about the upcoming. Yes. So you definitely have to check out Heather. She has, it's basically talking more specifically about just coaching and what to look for and why every physician needs a coach. Lots of great insight from someone who has lots of conviction about what she's doing and how she's doing it, and obviously been very successful doing that. And I guess we're up to our Friday faves. So you want me to start first?
Oh, you can start. You keep going. You're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. Okay. Well, this is so strange because I was in the middle of reading this article and people are going to think I'm a total nut job and that I'm a total dork. Which probably I am, but this is the back letter, and it's something that I read. It's like a monthly publication. Don't know what you think about it, Kevin, but for us in the pain realm, even though the Change Physician's not focused on pain per se, I thought there was a really cool term that they brought up, and they defined a few terms, and one I just don't use very often, and I just thought, oh, this is perfect. We can go in different tangents with this. But boondoggle. That was the word of this particular article. And they defined it as a work or activity that is wasteful or pointless, but gives the appearance of having value. And boy, I could take that in so many directions right now. But in this particular case, it might be related to, things that are done for pain that are kind of pointless and don't really have great value for patients. But there's a lot of things in life in different realms of life that it's apropos for using that word. So that was like my
first
Friday.
Time you've heard boondoggle?
No, it's not the first time. I just hadn't. I don't ever use it, and so it just like reminded me of a word that I never use. Oh. And it defined it so I could just like reference it. So
first time I've ever heard a definition of boondoggle, which I do like their definition.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we might have looks like we got either Marcy or Eric or both that want to jump in for happy hour.
Eric's on call, I think. So let's see if maybe it's Marcy.
Okay. We'll let them know we're live. And I'll turn off the video.
There she
We are
is.
live, just so you know.
Hello.
Hi, how are
Hello.
you?
Good. How are you?
Good. We are live on Facebook. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
You're used to this kind of a surprise.
It's not a surprise this time.
I
I'm fully
know.
expecting it now.
No, you're perfectly prepared for it. It's
Great.
been a quiet evening. We've just been talking about our doing our Friday faves we do on Facebook to share with the world about what's happened this past week with the podcast and things that we've really enjoyed this past week and what's coming up. So you popped in right when I was talking about my favorite term I came across, or one of my favorite little words.
Oh, what was that?
Well, it's really not that cute. It's just called boondoggle, and I never use that word, so I had to like tell people the definition and just say how interesting it is that you can relate it to so many different things in this world, whether now, which is a lot of things going on that are kind of crazy.
Sure.
But what were you going to say, Kevin?
You at least should give the definition, because this was in a medical newsletter.
Yes, it was.
Which would be appropriate, but their definition is really good for, you know,
Yeah.
most of us have used boondoggle or have said it, but
Sure.
they had to define it, which I really like.
Yeah, it says a work or activity that is wasteful or pointless, but gives the appearance of having value. So
That's a great definition.
Isn't it? So I was
Yeah.
like, well, I could apply that in so many, whether it's medical, political, there's all kinds of things you could go down that road. But
For sure.
yeah, so that one just kind of like, I saw it yesterday and I thought, oh, I'm going to just use this for my Friday fave. So we're going to let Kevin share his Friday fave and see what he came up with.
Mine this week is actually just the weather. I think at the end of
You're on the
August,
West Coast.
I'm on the West Coast, and I'm appreciative of the weather. And the first time I used it was when we had the fires and we had rain. That was a big day when I was really thankful to the weather we had. But this is, we're starting getting into Oregon fall weather. So, you know, like hazy mornings and kind of foggy. And I grew up in the Carson Tahoe area of Nevada, so high desert. And I just love the fog. So I love it. Like, and made me think I'm probably turning into an Oregonian, because I just, in the summer, you know, it gets all sunny and there's no clouds and it's like hot, and you just start looking forward to it when the clouds are coming in and the mist starts coming in. And yeah, so I was really happy and waking up in the morning and saying, this is so nice. I'm going to use this for my Friday face. So I am appreciative for our fall weather in Oregon.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't do a proper introduction for people like joining us, if there are people watching at all right now. Marcy Larson that's joined us has been a guest with us before and has an amazing podcast. And always Andy is you actually have a longer version of that.
Yeah. It's losing a child. Always Andy's mom.
Always
you can find me if you just put in always Andy's mom. You find me.
Yeah. So she's been just a wonderful guest and joined us for our last month's online happy hour. And everyone's been gracious enough to let us put them on live on Facebook to let people listen to our conversations. But I think it's a great way for people to get exposed to, you know, people that are doing some really cool things like you are online. And your husband too, of course, Eric Larson with the Paradox podcast, really cool stuff. So what were you gonna say?
He's on his way home, actually, so he may join us.
Is he? I was just going to say that, because Eric's living the true anesthesiologist life of call.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's not in-house, so that's good.
Yeah, he'll be coming home. He said he was done, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes ago or so. So he'll be coming. I can't remember what his call was today. Okay. Now, that's like a true doctor wife that I don't even know now. We have some that are in-house and some that are not. And clearly this was a not. Oh, he is Blodgett 3, which means he's the third to last one to come home from Blodgett Hospital. So
well, there you go. This is like the true nature of the world of medicine for those listening that aren't in medicine. There's a lot of unpredictability to our schedules. And
definitely. So much now. COVID has been very, very bad here this week, especially. Really? So he's having more cases cancel and just a lot. And then they've had to cancel some because our hospital is starting to get more full and the ICU is getting more full. So we're having quite a bit more trouble. And like Monday, the patient showed up and apparently the surgeon had not believed the positive COVID test, so was just going to repeat it when they got there. And lo and behold, the patient still has COVID, and you aren't going to do surgery.
So tell people that are listening, where exactly are you located? What part of the country?
We are in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah. So your numbers, of course, regardless of testing's going up, their numbers of positives go up, but your hospitalization rates are increasing as well.
Yeah. And our positivity rate had been, honestly, it had been this whole time more like 3%. And then over the last week or two, it's gone up, and today is up to 12. So, I mean, It's gone up quite substantially. So anyway, it's been not particularly fun, but.
No.
And are they thinking, what are they anticipating? Because I know like in Wisconsin and things, they've been looking at like the when the colleges brought in all the students and they were spiking around that and other things.
Yeah. Well, and we don't have a big college university here in Grand Rapids, because my daughter's at the University of Michigan, and the county, Washtenaw County, shut down all the students and said no one could leave their dorm room, no one can go off campus, no one can go into a store for 2 weeks, because they were 100% blaming everything on the students. And I think that was not quite fair, because it's going up everywhere in the whole state. Mm-hmm. We don't have a big university, and our rates are higher than Washtenaw County. And Washtenaw County, that age group, of course, the college age group, now since they've been quarantined for a week and a half, has been stable, but they're 30 to 49-year-olds and up have still been continuing to increase. So it's hard to know. And it seemed like, Wisconsin got very, very bad. And then it went to the UP of Michigan, which is of course connected to Wisconsin. And then it was in Northern Michigan. And now it's just kind of morphing its way down. So it seems like it's just kind of moving geographically, so.
With the fall weather and everything. And
right, everybody has to be inside now, and people are getting a little tired of all of the quarantining, I think, and it's cold here. I mean, it's cold. You have nice fall weather, but we are 30s. Like I think our high today was like 41 or something. So it's you're not spending time outside like you were before. So the leaves are still pretty, but getting to the very, very end. They're a lot nicer 2 weeks ago.
Are the bars hopping there, or are they closed?
They are not closed. I don't know.
Curious.
I mean, I
don't really keep up with it.
I just don't go out. I think I don't know. And I think they've got new restrictions, like at tables now you can't have more than 6 people at a table or something. Gotcha. I think that was just yesterday. But again, like I said, we're just not really doing much of anything. So
sure.
I don't really know.
Yeah, and Eric is more. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say that makes me feel so good because I don't feel like we're hardcore at all, but I'm always talking to my wife. I'm like, apparently we're like totally hardcore because we just stay home. Like, but I'll be like, I'll look on Facebook. I'm like seeing these people doing stuff, and I'm like, we just stay home. Like that's. It's not, we just don't do all this stuff.
I know.
And apparently we're really hardcore, I guess, because there's a lot of people.
Because you're living the simple life.
The simple life, yeah. And it's just, I don't know. It's interesting. So I'm glad to hear that you and Eric are staying home.
Yeah. Well, we go to our cottage up north. So, and
oh, nice.
But again, we just kind of go back and forth between the two places.
Yeah.
And nothing much else. So,
yeah. Well, he gets, he's in a hospital setting. So it's a little different. Like I'm in a surgery center, elective cases. I kind of know who I'm seeing. They all get tested. And it's a little different. I think for him, there's a little bit more unpredictability with what he's seeing and the kind of
it's hard to know, because some days he's in surgery centers too.
Okay.
So he kind of is back and forth with what he's doing. And they've not shut down too many cases yet, I don't think. I mean, just a few really. Because they did that, in the spring. We held off on everything and then just got so far behind. It was kind of a mess. So you don't do that anymore.
Yeah. We just have to be smart, be selective. Yeah. I don't know, use our common sense, I guess. It's sometimes a lot to ask.
Yeah. Well, can you look at the spring? no, that was really scary because nobody knew what the hell was happening, right? We didn't
Right.
We didn't know anything.
Even I didn't really believe. I kept minimizing it the first week. I'm like, oh, come on, and then of course I'm like, wait a minute, we better really pay attention.
It did seem like everyone was being more dramatic, and it really wasn't gonna, is it really gonna be that bad?
It's that whole novel virus thing where it's like, oh, so now it's got to like run rampant throughout the human civilization before it calms down. Yeah, that's a little different than your good old influenza that changes from time to time.
We had a couple of those, and I guess you should use them as a practice scenario and appreciate them. But it was like, was it SARS? We had two that I remember. The swine flu one, H1N1 was a big one, and then SARS, and I don't know. You kind of live through those, and you're like, okay, there's a new virus. It's in China. You don't really hear it now, and then it started getting concerning though when you're like, okay, something's weird here. Something this is a little bit different this time.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah, it's definitely I think it's just so ironic that 2020 is the year it happened. Like this whole 2020, hindsight's 2020. Like there's so much that we're gonna learn from this whole year. And even like for ourselves and our lifestyle, like things that we start doing that we never did before, that then we realize we might like to keep doing that. So little silver linings here and there.
We just had parent-teacher conferences via Zoom. We signed up for 5-minute slots with all of the teachers in the high school, and because normally they had them all in the gym in the high school and you had to wait in line, and it was this maneuvering trying to see, is this teacher's line long or that long, and you just go from one to another. It was beautiful. It was like you had your 5-minute slot, you went in there, they let you in, they kicked you out at 5 minutes. I was sitting right here at the computer the whole time. Of course, Eric was late in the hospital like he always was. So he missed the first two, but it really was good. And we got to like the second to the last one. And the teacher goes, yeah, I was just telling the principal that I think we need to just do this. This is much better than it used to be. So,
yeah, I think some patients too. I mean, I do pre-ops before, the surgeries, and it really is a beautiful thing for them. They don't have to travel. They don't have to wait in a waiting room around maybe some sick people, who knows? That's really, there's some areas of that are, I think people want to hold on to. That's good that you got to do it that way.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, as a parent. Well, cool. Anything going on with your podcast or exciting or anything coming up that's being released?
Well, I just had a great one yesterday that came out that I really liked. Her name was Jill Sullivan, and she started a ministry called While We're Waiting, and it's about the time that you kind of are waiting after your child dies before you can join them in heaven. And it's a beautiful ministry, and that was really cool. But my exciting thing for the week really, I would say, was talking to the new bereavement coordinator at the Children's Hospital. So we got to talk about that, and I got to talk to her about how I really want to teach the staff and talk to the staff about things, because as I've talked to you before, so many people just don't know what to say, and they feel really uncomfortable, and they're just really, really ill-equipped to deal with people after, surrounding death. Really, they just don't know what to do and get all panicky. And so I really want to, and it'll have to be, I'm sure, after COVID, because everything's so crazy right now, but to kind of teach the different services, going in and talking to nurses, talking to doctors, talking to the medical students. And then also we're going to start a new, I think, parent bereavement committee for the hospital, just to be able to kind of work on those things. And I think that will be really great. So I think I'm going to probably chair that committee and get that going, and just really try to help that process. Cause she said she's only been there in that position about a year. And she said she just, she talks to all the people at the Children's Hospital, and no one seems to want to think about the fact that sometimes kids actually die, and then we don't get them all better. And kind of what to do when that happens, because it's just kind of shoved aside. that this is the place where they come and make kids better. But, you know, sometimes you don't. And to be able to support families when that is the outcome is really important. And I think not to shy away from and be so scared that someone's going to sue you, or someone's going to be angry, or someone's going to, you know, when their child dies. And I think that tends to be the case, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the most important part, like, yeah, it's great. People want to feel good about helping children, but the one thing that you have to be really like better at and be willing to embrace is the most challenging times when a child's lost. That would seem, and when it comes from a lawsuit standpoint, I mean, the studies that I've read is that the more you actually engage and connect and don't shy away and embrace it and feel comfortable and feel like they feel like you care, that's what's going to keep you from getting sued.
Yeah. And that's what I told her too. And she really appreciated that. And she felt like that might be a way to go to try to get things moving forward a little bit more, is if she kind of talked to the administration about that, and about that actually probably helping in that regard too. Because I have, you know, I've met a lot of bereaved parents, and a good number of them are angry. And they're angry at the hospital or the provider or the whatever. And a lot of times it seems that, you know, I can think of one woman who really wants, whose child died by suicide. And I think she wants to blame his doctors, because really in her heart of hearts, she's kind of blaming herself. And it's easier to blame someone. And I understand that and I appreciate that, but I still feel like she, in that anger, she ends up being stuck in her grief. And as the years go on, she just sits in the anger and doesn't actually start to heal. So even though you might think, well, it's better for her to be angry at me than angry at her, the best case scenario would be for her to be able to let go of the anger altogether and really see her start to heal. Because those are the parents that I see that are just so stuck in their grief, are the ones that just hang on to that anger forever.
Yeah. Oh, you reminded me of a patient I took care of in my pain fellowship. I mean, you just made me, I just had a flashback, but literally I could feel her anger 5 years after her child was, I can't remember exactly how this person had died, but there was a kind of a projection of anger to the medical system, and I felt it on me. And she couldn't move on in the sense of being able to live her life. And it was a very uncomfortable, but I was willing to engage with her, but I felt like there was no way I was gonna be able to help her at that moment, other than just listen. I think she really needed someone to help her process that kind of anger, but
Yeah, I've been in support groups with people that just like hate doctors and say they hate doctors, and that is no fun to be the doctor, because you do feel like I'm having like daggers being looked at me, you know, like I'm being attacked. Most of the time, I think once they start to get to know you as a person, then that anger can subside. But that's why it would be great for people to be more engaged, because as you get more engaged, then it's harder to stay angry with someone, I think. So
that's a great point. And I just got the word, I don't know if this is the appropriate word, but it's almost being curious or be willing to discuss or listen, because it makes me think of war vets and PTSD and traumatic situations, and how a lot of the Vietnam vets ended up going back to Vietnam, and how healing that could be when you're going to an environment where you see so many horrible, awful things. You can hold this anger, but the more that you can hear the other side and see other people's perspectives, I guess it's sort of a lesson about life in general.
Yes.
You know, the more you connect and the more you see the other person as human, and you can see that they have values and they're similar to you, you know, it becomes much more difficult to fall into that anger and hatred. I think, you know, that's an interesting topic. You know, anger and forgiveness is a really interesting one. Because then people are, well, you know, it's like, what's the difference between forgiveness and acceptance, right? Because I think there's some subtleties there. And I think a lot of people get hung up on the forgiveness of thinking, well, if I'm forgiving, somehow I'm saying that was okay. And from my understanding, I've just kind of touched on that stuff a little bit. You're never saying it's okay. You're sort of relinquishing the power that event has over you.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. That was the other thing I think I read about anger is when you're angry at someone, they have power over you because you're allowing them to, I don't know, you're almost allowing them to have this control that you're feeding into with your anger rather than letting it go.
Yeah, I feel that way with us in the car accident and the woman that hit us. I had that anger for a long time and it did hold power over me. And it's never okay, or I'm never feeling great about the fact that she hit us and killed my son. But I have I've accepted it and I've forgiven her for it. It doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but I had to let go of the anger. It was a poison.
Yeah.
So as a change of the subject, Eric just texted me that he is downstairs watching us on TV. So
Right, he's scared to come up or what?
Apparently he's scared to come upstairs. Again, I sent him a text that says, come up here, but he has not done so. So watch us on TV.
We're telling the world that he's not joining us.
Right. Well, you know what we could do? You could talk about Eric. You can tell us all the little idiosyncrasies that Dr. Eric Larson.
I should tell secrets of Eric or something. I don't know. I've got to come up with something really good to see if I can get him to walk up the flight of stairs. I think he's eating dinner. I'm sure he's very hungry, but
it's all good. You just made me think the little thing that we had sent you. I wanted to see.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I want to see what it looked like. Can you show us? Can you go get it?
Yeah, I'm going to go get it. Well, and you know what's funny? It's in the same room that Eric's in. But I am so excited. I love it. And I wanted to send you a thank you card and I didn't have
don't worry about it.
Address. No, because I have these really cool Always Andy's Mom cards that I never use. So I really wanted to send it. Okay, anyway, I'll be right back.
Yeah, definitely. That's funny. I almost forgot about that. It was it got to her pretty fast. So yeah, I want to see. While we're waiting on her, why don't you tell them people what's coming up?
Oh, what is coming up? Well, we always have good stuff coming up. And we have
this is so exciting coming up.
Oh, Mike Wu Ming of Bootstrap MD. He'll be on talking about his journey, and he's got a great story as always, kind of early entrepreneurial endeavors. I think he actually started like in medical school practically.
He started his stuff like in the 90s. Like
definitely in the 90s, but I'm pretty sure he started his entrepreneurial stuff at least in medical school, and then kind of did that. And he's a fun guy. Yeah, the stuff he was doing after practice. And then we also have Dr. Scott Parazynski, who is an astronaut and entrepreneur, and he'll talk about his experiences in going into outer space and how he chose his residency and did that whole process, and had the unexpected occurrence of applying to the NASA space program and getting in on his first shot when he wasn't anticipating that. So that's a great story, great guy, lot of fun. So
awesome. Yeah. And it looks like just a little sneak peek for the following week. Marcy's husband will be on episode 40. So and
here he comes.
His ghost is coming around the corner. Okay, there it is.
There he is.
And here's the great book.
Hey.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, there we go. Did it come with lined paper?
Yes, okay, it's so beautiful. I love it.
Oh, good. Wonderful. Well, I figured you probably take notes from time to time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If you're doing podcasts, you kind of have to.
I know, and I've been writing up some things, so.
Man, how long was your day, Eric? We're on live on Facebook, as you know.
I don't know. Let's see. I started at 6:30, so 14 hours.
14. Man, I don't know. You love your wife. You just got, somehow decided to come and join us on the live feed, and you're probably starving and tired. And
oh no, he already ate.
Oh, okay.
That's what he was doing when he was watching us on TV. He was eating.
It's anesthesia. You digest your food tomorrow.
That's right. Eat in 3 minutes and digest tomorrow.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Bathroom break, lunch break, and all at the same time, pretty much.
Yeah. A crazy life. I never really realized at the time that I picked anesthesia that I would be in a room at 60 something degrees, walls with no windows, blaring music, some personalities that, you know, are too loud. Some are nice. But there's certain aspects I just kind of overlooked. I was just so focused on the training and what to know and everything. So I don't know about you, but sometimes it's not the ideal wellness environment.
Like,
No,
and you made me think of
Pam. Do you know Pam Weibel?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I had her on my show, and she actually started interviewing me at the end of the show because she's like, why do you think anesthesiologists have such a high suicide rate, right? Compared to almost, I think, the highest of all the physician specialists,
Mm-hmm.
you know, outside of dentists.
Nice.
You know. And anyway, I think a lot of it is the fact that we get really no positive feedback from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You're really a problem most of the time, whether it's with the surgeons not moving fast enough for the administration or being an obstruction or obstacle. The patients don't remember you. And if they do, it's because they were sick, outside of obstetrics. And so, yeah, there's really not a lot of positive interactions you have. And I remember training that one of the first things that our chair said is that anesthesia is the one specialty where you have to have all internal, a high internal worth, because that's where you're going to get, I did a good job today. No one really knows, but I know that I move things efficiently and safely and whatever. And that's very true. I mean, much more so in residency than I think in practice. Actual practice, my practice is pretty nice. We have lots of really great surgeons and people to work with, but there is a lot of truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get the little girl that I got yesterday that said to me, she's like 7 or 8 years old. And I walked in and we were talking for a while and she goes, "You're my favorite doctor ever." You don't get that. I get that.
Not once. Not once.
Yeah.
Oh, you did hit OB.
Get it though, because the obstetrics you do.
Yeah.
Because I have had moms come in and they have given birth and they will say, "I love your husband." And I say, "Yeah, I do too."
Obstetrics
Back off, sister.
That was the only place I ever had a patient take a picture of me. They're like, "Come into the photo. I want you in this picture." And I was like, "Okay." Best. And because you put the epidural in and all of a sudden you're a magic person. But yeah.
They never name their kids after you. They always say they're going to. And they never. I had an Erica once, but I think it was by chance. There's actually nothing to do. We named our kid our youngest after the anesthesiologist who put Marcy's epidural in.
We did.
Really?
No.
It wasn't for that reason.
Oh.
No.
My maiden name was Peterson, so we named him Peter. But the guy putting in my epidural was named Peter, so we at least told him that it was for that.
Just ironic.
Okay. You made him feel good because you knew he needed that.
What's funny is our girl name, because we didn't know we were having, our girl name was Molly, and it turns out my other partner Molly was on that day. So both of them were there, and
and Molly was going to do my epidural all day, but it was just taking so long, and so finally she's like, "I'm going to go home. You can call me back if you want." And I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to call her back. It's fine. We've been friends for a long time, so she really wanted to do it. So I decided not to. But then, the joke was then we named our boy Peter. Otherwise, we would have had to name our boy Molly.
Like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that would have been unique. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so true. So much of the, there's I guess even like with anesthesia, when things kind of go a little slower, you say you felt like you went efficiently, even if you had slowed down and they think that you're being a little slower, like that day, it's like they don't even realize like you were just managing a laryngospasm and all these other things. Like everyone thinks that the patient's breathing fine. I've had surgeons say, "Oh, well, their chest is rising up and down." I'm like, yeah, but nothing's going in and out of the mouth. It's upper airway obstruction. They're going to die if I don't take care of this situation right now. So really, people don't appreciate sometimes those nuances unless they do what you do. It's just, like you said, you have to just kind of feel good that you did the right thing and pat yourself on the back at times. Yeah. So thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you for what you do.
I'll give
We
him
appreciate you. We appreciate the anesthesiologists.
No, I have to share with you, Eric, that and I've brought this up a few times. Kevin's heard this, but I feel really blessed, at least for right at this point in my career. I have the ability to do elective cases, and not just because of COVID, but I do pre-ops ahead of time, and I think it's really helped capture that part that I don't really get. I kind of create the relationship before the day of surgery, kind of alleviate some anxiety and whatnot, make it easier so I don't have to rush between patients to talk to them real fast. And then I basically send them a link to do some feedback. And then I have an open box for them to say whatever for testimonial possibilities or whatever. And that is extremely rewarding from an anesthesia standpoint. It just kind of gives you that, I don't know, even if they don't understand fully what you do, the appreciation comes back to you. And so I've almost kind of built that in for myself.
Yeah.
And so I even the surgeon that I'm working with says it's like a game changer for them, because they're kind of like, oh, well, you'll talk to them before the day of surgery, and then they feel a little bit better. So we're thinking of maybe reporting this or presenting it at some point in the next year or so, just as a kind of just the way I have it laid out and set up, and I'm keeping track of a lot of things so that, you know, maybe people can start implementing this. I think it's a better way to do anesthesia in elective kind of situations. So.
Yeah, no question. And what's interesting is whenever you talk about preoperative clinics, or it's always in the you know, outcomes are not, they're clinical outcomes, right? They're not how at ease are you, or your satisfaction. Maybe satisfaction scores, maybe, but no one ever cares about that in academics. You know, what sort of what your experience was, and did you enjoy it, and what it was meaningful for the anesthesiologist as well. But you know, our practice is so big. But I could see something like that we could possibly do, and that would be very helpful. But I was on pain. I was doing perioperative pain today, so I was doing nerve blocks and such for most of the day until I take over in the OR. But I go on rounds, and a lot of the rounds you don't have to, because they're single shot blocks, and you just kind of go see. It's really kind of PR. You just kind of go and say, "How you doing?" Yeah. But it's also discouraging if they are not doing well, because there's nothing you do. Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're hurting. Better talk to the surgeon. But they all actually were. It was actually nice, because the people I talked to the day before got to see him, and he was doing great. He's a missionary, and anyway, so those are kind of nice things to do sometimes, because we don't usually get that, you know.
Yeah, and those surveys, I don't think people really think about the anesthesia provider. You know, it's kind of nice to get the feedback for us, for our feelings that, you know, not that you can please everyone or that everything's going to go perfectly, but that little bit of feedback is not so much for your hospital, you know, getting, I don't know how it's tied into payment and whatnot, but it's not just about the patient too. It's that interaction and you know, I think from a wellness standpoint for physicians to know that, that your patients had a good experience, or on the flip side, like you may not have known that there was some issue that happened that they may not come to you, or they don't know how to reach you. I think it's really good to have that feedback for clinical, how you take care of patients.
Sure. Yeah, I would always ask the PACU nurses, you know, how my patients do. And then once you're there long enough, they'll actually be honest with you.
Yes. Yeah. I'm amazed how recovery nurses are not, I guess I'm considered kind of an oddball in the sense that I don't want to speak for other people, but I want to actually know the details, and I want to be called. And there are some people that don't want to be bothered. And that is, you know, unless I really need my sleep for being on call or something, which I'm not. I want to know. I mean, it doesn't help anybody if I don't get feedback. But Kevin, were we interrupting you?
No. I was just thinking about, you know, my brain's always dancing when people are talking. I'm thinking about stuff, and in these talks about feedbacks and thinking about, okay, from anesthesia standpoint, how difficult it is to feel that validation, that patient care validation, you know, and so many of us, I think most of us went into healthcare because we want to help people. And then I started thinking about these feedback forms where you were mentioning those. And then I was thinking about Press Ganey, which they say are feedback, but aren't really feedback forms. And if, you know, I always found it interesting when they're linking physician bonuses or compensation to Press Ganey, and almost like 3/4 of a Press Ganey scale has nothing to do with the clinical interaction. It's like, did they answer the phone, or do the front office staff, all the stuff that the physician doesn't have any control over. And you know, we know physician burnout's an issue. So now I'm like, well, it makes me want to go search and do a literature search on, well, what's the effect of positive feedback to physician interaction? What it would, like, if you made a short survey that just said that you could provide feedback to your physician. So busy primary care office where you don't, you know, you're busy typing your things, or what we were talking with our guest today on our podcast, Paul Thomas, where they're doing their admin stuff, is if they could get feedback saying, this was a great interaction. I really enjoyed seeing Dr. So-and-so today. Some little positive feedback at the end of the day, that your MA could just hand you these slips of paper that people had, that was maybe 1 or 2 questions specific to the interaction. Like, how well did your interaction go? Or what went well with your visit with Dr. So-and-so today? That'd be a nice little thing to see in your practice.
Yeah, I almost feel like people have continuity with their patients will naturally get that. But for short things, it's harder. Because I'm always looking at the primary care side. I feel like I'm a primary care doctor who's not a primary care doctor. Like I'm married to one. I'm not in it, but I have this huge heart. I think if I hadn't gone into anesthesia, I probably would have done primary care. But You still can.
Not now. No, not now. Not now.
You want to start a new residency? Come on.
No desire to start a new
wellness.
Anyone could do family practice, right?
Oh.
Pediatrics.
I always love that. Yeah, it's just, anybody can do that. Come on, people.
Antibiotic, here you go.
As a specialist, it always makes me laugh, because specialists can be currently very disparaging to primary care, those of our primary care colleagues, including pediatrics. And I'm like, as a specialist, there's like 5 drugs that I had to know, and there's like 5 conditions that I really had to know. And to pretend that it's just so backward that the specialists have this little narrow select thing. It's so much easier to know all the stuff about a few things than to really have that deep ingrained understanding of so many different conditions and everything that needs to be juggling. So that was a little bit off topic, but yeah, I appreciate those primary care docs. But
there is no specific topic, on our Friday faves.
No.
And
So you were saying that the feedback that they get, but I'm not even sure if they're getting that feedback as much as they used to, when you're having 7 minutes to see a patient or 8 minutes to see a patient, and you're realizing you have to type all the things in the EMR and do that. I think they get it, but I think it'd be nice if they could get a little bit more, if they could have that human connection again.
I feel really lucky in our office, as we have made really all of our visits are 20 minutes. And so you do have more time, and I do have time really to talk to those kids a little bit too, just chat with them about how school's going and how life's going. So I feel like I get that a little more than some other doctors do, because some of them, they have to see so many patients, but we're really lucky. I think. I don't make as much money as those other ones, I'm sure, but that's okay. My quality of life and physician satisfaction is way higher than it would be otherwise.
Yeah.
So,
what were you going to say, Eric?
So the one thing we talk about in my show quite a bit is that the number one satisfier for physicians is professional, is their interaction and their relationship with the patients. And I wonder sometimes the anesthesia, if it's like that. I feel like it is for me as well, which is weird because I don't really see people for very long. I mean, we have a few minutes and then you're kind of reeling back to the OR. I definitely get to talk to people a little bit more when I'm doing nerve blocks, if I've got some time to, joke around with the family or something like that. But I was also thinking about the surveys, and I feel like the surveys for medicine are very, for one thing, like Kevin was saying, they rarely have anything to do with what you're doing. I mean, I know one of the metrics we have is, was your pain controlled? That's one of the anesthesia. What during your hospital stay? Well, you were in the hospital for 3 weeks, and I don't know how much impact I did for your one surgery. But the other thing is, I think all these surveys, we ask too many questions. I mean, I think if you want to, there's only like probably 2 things you really need to know from someone, and I feel like people are much less likely to answer any survey where you have 20 different questions, and then
they're way more than that.
Oh, I know. But I mean, like, even when you answer something, you go to like Pizza Hut or something, you'll get those questions. How was the service? Was it clean? 1 to 5? Was it, the service or efficient? Whereas you probably only need to know about 2 things, right?
Did you feel cared for?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, and this is the other thing that I hate, is those surveys are always up against everyone else, like in your state or in your region, and you can get like a 94% on something and be in the red, because in order to be in the green, you had to be in the top whatever portion, and everyone is that good. So why can't everyone get a good score on that? If you're at 94, 95%, you should not be in the bottom quartile at all and be docked for that, which is what happens. It's so frustrating. So you really have to get a perfect score. If you don't get a perfect 5 on everything, if they knock you down 1, which naturally sometimes you feel like, well, I don't want to say 5 for everything. I mean, they probably could have done better. I'll give them a 4. But if you give them a 4, it's like giving them a 0. Like it's especially with our numbers in pediatrics, just looking at them, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And in general, I think people are pretty happy with their pediatricians. If they weren't, they'd leave and go somewhere else. So, right? I mean, there are plenty of pediatricians in Grand Rapids. If you're unhappy, you go to somebody else that you're happy with. But then it's only going to be the top 25% that are going to get that little. And our insurance company gives these golden apples. So you have to get so many golden apples to be considered great. And so then you have to do things like, oh, we've got to almost teach for the test and say at the end of the visit, was there anything else that I could do for you today? Because you're going to get the question, did your physician do everything that they could have done for you that day? So it's just ridiculous and I hate it.
Oh my gosh. Sounds like, yeah, even the way that they're comparing is like more of a competitive attitude versus the collaborative one. Yeah.
Well, there's so much more to making a useful survey than I think people appreciate. And I think that's the thing, is so many of the surveys that are created are just this junk, 52 questions of fill in the blanks or whatever, that they don't provide you the verities. I know, because I use surveys all the time, because I do mostly like teaching and working with clinical groups. And I went from a lot to 4 questions, and they're all fill in the blank. And it's short enough that I get useful information from it. And what they write is obviously so much more important than any of the little numbers that they use. And you can't use that if you're trying to crunch data and find out statistical significance or anything. But from a useful utility standpoint, it's so much better. And I think most of these, what are we trying to use these surveys for? Are we using them as a metric to please the insurance company so we get a golden apple? Or are we using them so that we can serve our patients better and create a better environment? And we probably know the answer to that one already.
So
we actually did make up our own survey the year before last. We put out a patient satisfaction survey that was just 10 questions, and we found it more helpful. But one of the reasons we did it is because we did have to be a certified medical home. We had to put out surveys, and for surveys for care coordination and surveys just for patient satisfaction. But we did find that using our own instead of just the Press Ganey one, it was more valuable because we could ask the questions that we wanted to know, and we knew what areas we were trying to improve already. Like, we were really working on our front staff. So we did have a lot of questions on that. Did you feel like was your call answered in appropriate amount of time or whatever, those type of things. We did that on purpose only because we personally were working on it,
Yeah. Got the family there. Well,
Peter in the background.
Before we finish up, Eric, do you mind sharing, is there anything you want to share about what's coming up or your next episode or something going on with your podcast?
So interesting things. I narrated an audiobook for my first.
That was cool.
So it's actually for sale. So one of the guests wrote a book, and I said, "Hey, I'll narrate it for free," which probably not a good marketing strategy, but I got paid in full, and so it was kind of a fun experience. So that was kind of neat, and now I can. And then, I recently had Jason Fung on, who was
that'd be interesting.
Is an expert in intermittent fasting whom I knew nothing about. I had a listener say, "Hey, you got to have this guy on." I'm like, I don't know who he is. All right. And it wasn't until after I interviewed him that I realized that he's got, he's written many books and all that.
Yeah, what was funny is he put out his episode and he said, "Oh, wow, this guy has 135,000 Facebook followers or Twitter followers. Well, and the woman I interviewed that day, I was like, "Oh, let me look her up. She had 35." Like, that's a little bit of a difference.
When is that episode? I would like to hear that, because I'm he's
it's already out.
It's out.
It was episode 102, and then I just released episode 103, which is Rebecca Bernard, who wrote a book on nurse practitioners and along with near null algebra. So, which is totally different type of show.
Episode 100 was fun too because I interviewed him.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you were talking about that happening.
Right. Yeah, she didn't know about it.
I didn't. I think he told me about it on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Because I didn't know anything about it. I just looked and like, what? But it's been done and released.
Oh, exciting! I'll have to take a listen. That's great. Oh.
Yeah, the Jason Fung one was really good.
Yeah, and he's a really interesting guy. Yeah,
he's a nephrologist. That's what I thought was really interesting.
I know.
So yeah, I've watched one of his talks, and I of course I talked to him about it, and he's it makes sense how he sort of got into it, because he said he's basically a lot of what they're doing is battling diabetes, right? I mean, that's mainly what causes most of the renal failure and heading to transplant. And so he's like, well, how do you stop getting diabetes? And then, what do we do to treat it? And those sorts of, and he just kind of asks fundamental questions, which, oftentimes we don't really ask.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like anytime you go to teach something, you end up learning more than you end up teaching the students, right? I mean, I think, because they'll ask you questions that are fundamental that you hadn't really ever considered or thought about for a while. And I remember teaching, even when I was in med school, I was tutoring the athletic department at Iowa. So I was athletes on algebra and stuff, which was kind of fun. But they would ask me questions, and I had never even thought about this. I was an engineering major, but I never thought about the basics of math. And then I go in and learn it. I'm like, oh, this is really actually pretty amazing. This is elegant, right? But you're just busy doing homework and studying for tests, and you don't really take the time to appreciate the subject, especially in the hard sciences, I think a little bit more. So anyway, I think there are lots of things like that if you get into it, and if you're curious enough later on to ask those questions, maybe you'll learn something or discover something that's helpful.
Yeah, it seems like the most important question is to ask why. Like that little kid, but why? Why is it like that?
Yeah.
Why does the Earth circle this? That kind of stuff. Yeah, it makes you learn more. It just made me think back to college too, when I was tutoring. That's when you really knew your stuff, when you had to really answer those questions.
Yeah. No, it just makes me depressed, because I was always a good student, but I didn't know how to learn. That's the thing that I think was really upsetting to me. It was literally 38, 39 when I went back, and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out pain as a board certified pain specialist. Something's not right here. I better go back to learn pain. And that's when I noticed, you start asking these questions that you never thought before, where people were spoon feeding you stuff, and you said, well, why would it be this way? Why does this work this way? Why are these risk factors? What's the commonalities here? What is the, what these things are? And man, I almost wish I could go back to school. It's like, man, if I could go to high school and do this, then I could learn these intricacies in math and appreciate all this stuff rather than regurgitate an answer. But
well, you could do that family practice residency.
You could do that family practice residency. That's right.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so glad that both of you joined us tonight on, let's see, what time is it there? It's your Central?
It's almost 9.
Yeah. We're in Eastern.
Yeah, you're Eastern.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking part of your Friday evening with us and sharing what you're doing again. And,
sure.
Kevin, any last thoughts or before we...
No, always fun to see the Larsons. So glad you can join us, Eric, and so wonderful to have you, Marcy. It was so great to have you.
I know, it was just me for a little while. I was feeling kind of lonely, but I would have won the door prize for sure then.
Right. That is correct.
Well, my thought was, we're just gonna have to make sure that your significant other gets a little something, because it just wouldn't be fair if we got 2 to Marcy and play the wheel of prizes or whatnot.
I know the wheel of prizes isn't really going to work that well.
What's funny is I host. So I was a former president of the Kent County Medical Society here, and I've been hosting this. We've been having conversations about race and
fireside chats
about race and culture and we have maybe 10, 15 physicians who are online, and so we give out door prizes. And so last week I had probably about half of them were my partners who were on, because there are a lot of us. And so I thought, well, the first show I had to like just randomly pick people out of, which means I don't randomly pick anyone. So this time I thought, I went to the website where you can enter in all the different words and then it just randomly picks a word. So it's, random number generator basically. And I had picked all three were anesthesiologists in my group. People were like convinced that there was some sort of scam going on. So the second guy who won, I'm like, this is really just an accident. And so I did it again, and he won his third time, right? So he can't get two door prizes. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to So actually 4 of them were all anesthesiologists. It was kind of like stacked and rigged, but
oh well,
I still have my job doing it. So I guess.
Well, you said they were the majority of the crowd, though, right? So by sampling,
about 50%. But it looked a little fishy. That's what I'm going to say.
Well,
there was a teachable moment there. You could have gone into like statistics and randomization.
Right. well, did you share the screen to prove that you were using some random pick the number thing?
I probably should have. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
But then I would realize how much I was misspelling their names. So
well, you can't win,
You'll have to get a cool looking wheel like Melissa has, though. You didn't ever do a wheel.
No,
maybe there are too many names.
This is my problem. I prepared about 3 minutes before that going on. So I found that
mine too.
Yeah.
I'll send you the website. I didn't make that place up. It someone else.
I'm confident you didn't make that up. Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right.
Well, I want to just thank you, and I'm glad that you definitely came for our follow-up online happy hour, and hoping to have over the next months and years that this will just keep growing. And I appreciate your support, and we want to support everything you both are doing. So we're looking forward to sharing Eric's episode on November 8th, so people can look out for that.
All right.
We'll send you the link so you know where that is.
Absolutely. Make sure I post it and all that kind of stuff. So perfect.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Good
Have
night.
a good night.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Next
Bye.
time we'll have a signature cocktail.
Okay. Yep, you need to work on that. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
All right, we're still live. So for those that were listening, if they're wondering what was all of this on my Challenge Doctor page, this is the Change Physician podcast and community. We just had some of our community pop on to just share the evening and for our monthly happy hour. And of course, we tag those on to our Friday faves for the Change Physician. And I'm Melissa Cady with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. And our plan is to have Friday Faves next Friday if you want to join us, or on our monthly online happy hour. Kevin, any last words?
Any last words? Every time you say that, I'm like, when am I getting executed or something? It's like, what's going to happen to me? Oh
Well,
my goodness.
I just start zooming out, and I don't ask you if I cut you off.
No, that's good. I think next week will be a very interesting it'll be an interesting week. So we'll see what we have to be what our Friday.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on next week.
We'll probably need drinks. Maybe we'll have to have our own personal happy hour that day, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
we'll chat about something.
Yeah. So
all right. Well, everyone have a good night, and we will talk to you next Friday.
Take care, everybody.